What's going on, fellow A-Plusers? It's your boy, Adam Perez, back once again with a brand new video review as we're set to dive into the season finale of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, as we have officially approached episode 8 and say farewell to this amazing season, honestly. If you ask me, I'm really just so sad to see that this is, in fact, the end, if you will. I'm truly going to need more Lord of the Rings in my life, honestly. Me and the girlfriend literally just watched Fellowship of the Ring, the extended version, several weeks back. Now that we have officially wrapped Rings of Power, I may just go ahead and check out the extended edition of The Two Towers and certainly give that a watch. Just something to hold me over until the upcoming season for Season 2 of Rings of Power. But they definitely went out on a magnificent note, if you ask me, finally crafting some incredible storylines as we get the revelations of not only Gandalf, but also of Sauron as well. So we'll definitely talk about those two characters along with plenty in here. So to kind of see everything come full circle and have some storylines certainly fleshed out. I'm kind of curious how other people feel about this particular season, especially after seeing the first episode or two. You kind of wonder what the pacing is going to be like, what the momentum is going to be like, and I did think they did an amazing job of building up throughout this season to get us to this particular point where the payoff was just incredible, if you ask me, guys. I was actually searching through some of my old boxes the other day, and I came across like a keepsake box that I have that I used to just keep old memorabilia, things that I want to just keep personally close to myself. I used to be a huge movie goer, and inside of it I wound up finding a bunch of old like movie stub tickets and things like that. And I remembered inside of it, because of the fact that I was a huge fan of Lord of the Rings at the time when it came out in theaters, I also wind up finding my one ring to rule them all. I think if you grew up around the time period of Lord of the Rings, or if you were big into fantasy, you probably owned yourself one of these rings as well. But I would definitely wear it around my chain. The burden of the ring bearer. Just call me Frodo, why don't you? I absolutely love this thing. Wore it out, and as you can see over the years, it's become not as gold as it used to be. I don't even know if you can see, there you go, the Elvish language on the side of it. Not as gold as it used to be, definitely tarnished. Might make my finger green at this point in time, but I thought it was actually pretty cool that I found this after all these years. So in line with the finale of Rings of Power, I will wear the Ring of Power here for you guys today, man. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into this review because it worked out extremely well. I think my speculation for Gandalf being Gandalf in regards to who is this stranger, I definitely saw some people suggesting he might be somebody else. I always kind of landed on Gandalf, so it's pretty cool to kind of see that come to fruition. The Halbrand character, from episode 1, I always felt off about this dude, and I even mentioned in my first episode review, I was like, I don't know if it's the actor, I don't know if it's the character itself, the way that he looks at people, the way that he holds himself, there's just something off about this guy. It doesn't sit very well with me. I'm not really a big fan of the character, and I said watch him be like one of the most important people, but I can see why and how he turns into one of the most important people, but why I probably feel that way towards the actor and that character and the way that he's portraying him, because he is in fact the Dark Lord, as good old Halbrand winds up making his revelation here that he is in fact Sauron himself. So pretty trippy to kind of see that story come full circle. And if there was any pushback I gotta give this episode, man, poor Sadak, the Harfoot, Sadak Burrows, I believe was his name. The fact that homeboy winds up dying in this episode, look, I've had to deal with 2 other black characters in another series that I watch die this week. This is like the 3rd black character that has died on the television show that I've watched this week. I wind up having, when I watched Andor, we had Lieutenant Gorn along with Vel's partner Tam, who was like her second in command. Those 2 were ousted in episode 6 of Andor, and in here, poor Sadak wind up biting the dust after helping the Harfoots, of course. But homeboy took a terrible dagger to the stomach and just could not recover after that. So we certainly certainly did have to say farewell to Sadak in this episode. But overall, man, I cannot wait for I cannot wait for season 2. I think they've done an amazing job of building it up to this particular point, and I definitely have some questions in regards to where some of our characters go from here, especially like Elrond and Galadriel. Now that Elrond has seemingly looked at the timeline or the hierarchy, what do you call it? The hierarchy, I should say, for the Southlands, and clearly learning the truth that Galadriel wind up learning. Like, there's no king of the Southlands, so who is this Halbrand guy? I would assume that they will have a conversation about a mistake that Galadriel certainly made in regards to bringing Sauron back to Middle Earth, and giving him a little bit extra power, if you will, under his belt now, certainly going forward. So yeah, definitely some big ramifications in here. How these rings are certainly going to turn out. I'm just glad that we got the opportunity to see at least some of the rings created here in this particular season, as we get the opportunity to see 3 of the rings that were created for the elves. Again, I believe that there's 7 rings that are then created for the dwarves, 9 for men, and then of course 1 for Sauron himself, if you will, to rule them all. So to see the first 3 rings in here created, just marvelous to be able to trace the history in this series, as it was very much so in the Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring opening sequence, where we have Galadriel giving the narration. I believe she specifically mentions those rings and who certainly had them. I am also surprised in this episode that we did not get ourselves a resurgence of Isildur, like popping up out of the, the downed house that was burnt down, like, I'm still alive. We got none of that from Isildur. He was not in this episode whatsoever. So if anything, I would assume that he would pop up maybe in the very first episode of season 2, like, y'all forgot about me, but here I am. So I am eager to kind of see what Isildur's impact will be come season 2. But overall, man, great stuff for this episode. I was definitely a big fan, to certainly say the least. But let's go ahead and get into more detailed stuff, if you will, as we highlight some of the characters in here. And I guess let's go with Gandalf first, because the Nori and this Stranger storyline has actually been quite appealing in here, as we get the opportunity to see that the 3 witches eventually do find the Stranger. We also know that the Harfoots are certainly following the Stranger as well to try and warn him. But the witches definitely get to him first and start calling him Lord Sauron, believing that they certainly have found him, thinking that he's been resurrected or revived possibly after the fall of Morgoth, and wants to certainly bring Sauron back to their land, the land of Rhûn. Or a place where at least this particular Stranger can at least find the constellation that he's certainly looking for. The constellation of stars apparently can only be found in Rhûn. And so they really talk this guy up to be like, your power is incredible and you can do whatever you want, enslave these people, yada, yada, yada. You're so incredibly powerful. And the idea of really opening him up to not only more power, but more knowledge of himself. The idea that when we do see the Harfoots try and rescue him in here, and they manage to take the staff away from one of the witches and gives it to the Stranger, there was a part of me that was wondering if like that unlocked either his power or his ability to speak. Like, I feel like we haven't seen the Stranger talk very much, or talk very little, almost to the point of, can you even talk? And by the end of this episode, it feels as though his mind is much clearer than what it certainly was. He's very eloquent with how he expresses himself. He can certainly talk with the greatest of ease. So I definitely do think that the witches removed maybe some of that fog that he certainly had, with the assumption of him being somebody else that they thought that he was, believing that he was Sauron, when in reality he was somebody else. And they refer to him as the Istar, I-S-T-R, the Istar, which Gandalf lets us know in Harfoot language it means sometimes wise one or the wizard. So it definitely is, in fact, Gandalf here. But I really love the relationship that he's built with Nori. The fact that Nori is the one that helps him get really from out of this rut, right? Like when Gandalf believes that he's seen the evil of his ways, or that, you know, that he can harm people with his powers and doesn't want Nori anywhere near, you know, the idea that she kind of gives him that advice of only you choose what you are, right? The idea that nobody else can tell you what you're gonna be or who you're gonna be, sort of thing. The choices you make determine that, nobody else's. And so if you want to be good, do good things. And so the fact that he picks up the staff and helps the Harfoots, the people that have certainly helped him out this entire time, was an incredible scene and sequence to definitely see. And it's a friendship that I've definitely have grown quite fond of. And by the end of this episode, when we see Nori going on him with his journey, now turned adventure, because I think he mentions going someplace alone is a journey, but with somebody it then in fact turns into an adventure. And this feels very much like the beginnings of Gandalf's love of little people and the other fellow adventures he eventually will have down the road with little people. So it's pretty cool to kind of see that Gandalf has kind of always had that in him. But honestly, like, if I was the Harfoot father of Nori, I'm not sending my daughter out with this older man. Like, there's no way. Like, hey, look, I know he's special, but there's no way I'm letting my little daughter go out into this journey and adventure with this old weird man all by himself. Nope, not happening. But you know what? It is fantasy, and it is not real. And so, hey, listen, if those Harfoot parents feel that confident in this guy to let their little girl go, hey, to each their own. You know what I'm saying? But overall, I thought the storyline here was great. Awesome to kind of see his powers really growing in here and really showcase just beautiful work when it comes to the special effects, especially when he turns the three witches into like those skeleton ghosts, and then it turns into butterflies. I mean, just breathtaking stuff. Even seeing like some of the fires and stuff diminish within the forest that they were fighting within. So great stuff. Follow your nose. Listen, if Fruit Loops ever needs a new mascot and Toucan Sam can't go anymore, boom, just throw Gandalf on that cover, right? Always follow your nose, and they'll definitely lead you in the right direction. So great stuff in regards to that storyline. Next up, before I even get to the main course when it comes to Galadriel along with Halbrand, I do want to speak briefly of the Queen of Numenor. The fact that we get one side here of the king speaking with one of the ladies. I believe it might be Elendil's daughter. I believe the cousin of the queen is mentioning that they want to create images of the king, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if it was like sculpting a tomb to resemble him or whatever the case may be, but they're looking for designs. And as she's trying to design and draw the king winds up waking up, mistaking her for the queen, and starts ranting and raving once again about his the visions, if you will, the prophecies that the queen has certainly already heard from him. But what's eye-opening in here is I was always wondering, why is the king the way that he is mentally, right? Like, when did his health kind of decline as much as it has? And the fact that he reveals it to us in this episode, it sounds very much like he's been looking into the Palantir way too many times, to the point to where now his own visions, what he sees, he can't even figure out what's reality, what's not, what's the future, what's the past, what's the present. His mind is scattered all over the place from looking into the Palantir. So you see how dangerous of not only of a weapon that it is, but also the temptation that it brings to keep going back to it, if you will. And so I would assume that won't affect the queen anymore, considering the fact that she is now blind. I would assume she can't really utilize it anymore, but who knows? Maybe if you can touch it, maybe you see the visions in your head and not necessarily through your eyes. So we'll definitely have to see. But I thought it was pretty eye-opening as to why the king is the way that he is, and honestly also to kind of see the queen finally arriving back home only to discover really the death of her father. I would assume the black banners was in fact to pay homage to the passing of the king, but I really love the great sequence in the scene between the queen and Elendil in here, because previous episode Elendil was done with the elves. He was ready to leave town. The face of Galadriel alone brought him to tears. The news of the queen wanting to even come back almost broke this man down. But I love the fact that while the queen is suffering and the queen is struggling with her new lifestyle of being blind and how to adapt, the one thing that always stunned me in the previous episode was how strong her resolve was. And I don't know if that resolve is finding its way to Elendil, but I really enjoy the course correction for Elendil in here. The idea that he mentioned something about going back to that conversation him and the queen had in the early episodes about what his name means, right? And one of the meanings of his name is friends to elves, or elvish friend, or whatever the case may be. And so the idea that he points out that, you know, to be a man of honor, you kind of have to stick by your words. The fact that despite the grief and the pain that certainly comes their way, their promise to their friends and the people that they want to help, they want to continue to honor that despite the pain that certainly might come with it. And to be able to just, for at least for me, it felt special to have the queen finally have somebody else on her side, you know, that will support her through thick and thin, that despite maybe some of the pushback she might get from others when she go back to Numenor, she's got an ally in Elendil. And I think that means everything to her and means everything to both of those characters, because it feels like they are now going to be the only two that they will rely on to lift each other up with whatever certainly may come their way. So again, the resolve of the people of Numenor, at least for the queen and for Elendil, was really surprising and just incredible to certainly watch here in this particular episode. So I'm glad to see that Elendil, despite what's happened to him, has opened his eyes just a little bit more and is true to who he is certainly as a person, his values, and his honor also. And then last but not least, guys, the Galadriel, Celebrimbor, Elrond, and Halbrand stuff in here. I will talk about Galadriel and Halbrand because I continue to really enjoy these two together. They've done a great job this series, I believe, of placing them together in a very odd circumstances in the middle of the ocean with a complete stranger, forcing them to kind of be together in the sense of navigating through this storyline, and really keeping them connected all season to kind of see how they grow on each other, if that's the word that I could use, right? Because even in the previous episode, when we saw Halbrand and Galadriel bring down J.R.R, there felt like a very intimate moment there. Like these two were feeling something between each other now that they've fought beside one another. Halbrand talked very highly about the way that Galadriel makes him feel certainly on the battlefield, right? There is something to that connection that these two characters have, and something that Galadriel can even see. There's a bond there. And so I kind of love the fact that they've played off of that into the sense of maybe even teasing the relationship aspect. And I only say that because when we do see Halbrand and Galadriel confronting each other and he gets inside of her mind and they're on the ship together, he's trying to entice her, talking about wanting to make her his queen, the fact that he feels that connection between them. And this is clearly something that's been happening all season long. So the fact that they kind of tease that bond between them, I thought was brilliant in this episode, because you as a viewer, you've certainly been able to feel it in the previous episodes, but it's something that Galadriel is clearly against now that the truth is out there and he's not the king of the Southlands whatsoever, and comes to find out that he is in fact Sauron. There's a great shot in here, and the Rings of Power cinematography, top notch. I will expect this show to be nominated for not only great visual effects, but also just great cinematography as well. But I will say the shot of them in the ocean looking down at their reflection in the water, and then having it turn upside down, and you see Galadriel as the queen of elves and Sauron sort of with his full armor and his crown on and things like that. It's pretty incredible shot to certainly see, but it definitely brings Galadriel certainly back to earth, right? That temptation of power, the idea of Halbrand saying, I want to save the world, and she asks, save it or rule it? And his answer being, what's the difference? Oh, there's a big difference, my guy. And the fact that you said that was enough to certainly go ahead and snap her out of it, and even put a dagger up to his throat, if you will. So definitely quash that concept and that thought of those two being together. Pretty interesting. But I love the line that he gives to her in here, because it just takes me back to the scene from Lord of the Rings when Frodo winds up giving the ring to her, and she winds up, starts thinking about what her life would be if she in fact did have the ring for herself. And what is it that she says? Stronger than the foundations of the earth, all shall love me and despair. And so the fact that they hearken back to that moment in here by having Sauron mention to her the fact that she would be his queen and stronger than the foundations of the earth, boom. Love the connections certainly immediately there. And really the wherewithal for Galadriel to know that probably could have possibly been a future of hers at some particular point in time. So great stuff in that regards. But if anything, I think this episode for me, and I think Halbrand does a great job of even pointing this out, Galadriel's been way ahead of herself this entire season. And I can't remember if we mentioned that in the episode when Galadriel approached the queen and was like, Halbrand's going to be ready. We're going to have an army ready in Middle Earth welcoming us, yada, yada, yada. I mean, she hadn't even consulted with Halbrand, and she was making the queen certainly all these promises. And to the point to, Halbrand's getting kind of pissed off, that you're going behind my back, not even talking to me about this stuff and making these decisions. And she has been way ahead of herself all season long. And the fact that she hasn't taken the time to truly plot this out and think things through, you get to see the mistake that she certainly has done, right? Like, there may be some people out there that watch this series that might, I don't know if they look at Galadriel as like this Mary Sue, or this is this perfect character. Look, she took a troll down all by herself while the rest of her men army just got destroyed by them, right? Galadriel is far from perfect, and I think this is a fantastic episode to show that she too certainly has her faults, and the fact that she so desperately, I think, wanted to not only get back to her world, but also prove people wrong, that she wound up finding herself making just a vast error here, and to the point where even Halbrand kind of points it out to her, right? The fact that, like, look, you were urging me, right? Like, you were the one that told me my past no longer means anything, that we can kind of start anew, and you're the one that labeled me King of the Southlands, and you're the one that put me and thrusted me in front of all these people, right? Like, you got me to this point that I'm at today. And so there's just immediate regret on Galadriel's face. She knows she certainly effed up. I mean, it's great to know that the enemy you've been hunting down is certainly still alive and out there, but you had all season to take him out, and you didn't. And now he's on the loose again, and he's out there. And I do wonder if the fact that he's escaped, she made a mistake. I wonder if she's making another mistake in the sense of pushing for the creation of three. When it was originally the creation of one thing, a crown, then it became a creation of, we're actually going to make two of these things. And now she comes in and says, no, we need to make three. I do wonder if that's a sense of she feels she needs additional power to complete her mission now, or if she honestly does believe that creating these three rings will be better for Middle Earth. And as she points it, right, one ring will corrupt, two will divide, 3 will certainly bring balance. We'll see if it plays out that way when it comes to the worlds of the elves. But the way that Elrond is looking at her, now that he's discovered the secret also to Halbrand, I do wonder if he's looking at her in the sense of, why didn't you reveal to me that you made this mistake? Or is he looking at her, looking at the rings, thinking, did you want to push for us to make a third one for you in an attempt to right your wrongs? You know what I mean? And I will be curious to see what the effect of it is going to be on these 3 characters. Nobody made a ring for what's his name? Gilgalad, the king himself, right? Like, at first you promised this dude a crown and he said no, but he gives Elrond 3 months to come up with something, and they're like, we'll just forget about the king. We'll make 3 rings for ourselves. The way that Celebrimbor was looking at it, I did not like the look on his face. Homeboy already kind of looked like he was being pulled in by the temptation of these particular rings. Again, I don't even know if these rings have any sort of side effects, with the exception of maybe the one ring to rule them all. But I do wonder if there are other side effects that these 3 new rings that have been created will certainly have on these characters going forward into a second season. But yeah, man, mistakes were made by Galadriel in here, but I thought the full circle of Galadriel and Halbrand's story was worked to perfection in this episode, if you ask me. I'm trying to see if there's anything else in particular that I certainly might have missed. Promises Galadriel the world if she were his queen. It is interesting motives in here too by Halbrand, talking as Sauron in the sense of explaining himself, right? The fact that after Morgoth was sort of defeated, he tells the story in a sense that grasp and that grip that was on him was kind of extinguished, and almost like he was a new man, or at least aware of his life and his surroundings and what he wanted to accomplish. And in the sense of wanting to be forgiven, he decided that he needs to not only heal the world, but save the world. And this is the lengths that he's certainly trying to go. Again, these, the villains never see themselves as the villains. They always try and see themselves certainly as heroes. And so while he may think he certainly wants to heal the world for the better, his concepts and his ideas of healing the world very much will bring others down, will suppress others, will certainly bring darkness to this world of Middle Earth, all in the name of saving it, if you know what I mean. So I love the way that his message is certainly delivered, but you can read through all the BS and understand the full reasoning behind all of it. I even love the line in here from Celebrimbor, where he says the idea of forging these 3 rings, not of the flesh, but over the flesh. And when you say some shit like that, that's why even Galadriel's like, did you hear that from Halbrand? I mean, when Halbrand is talking like that, you know there's something evil kind of going on when you want to power over flesh, like over people, and maybe get them to do whatever you want, sort of thing. That's pretty menacing in and of itself. But great stuff if you ask me, man. I was really thrilled to kind of see it all come together. I thought maybe Galadriel would be a little bit more with Elrond for certainly sending her off. The king certainly was not happy to see her back. Like, you shouldn't even be here, girl. So he definitely had some words for Galadriel, to say the least. But they seem like they are keeping their friendship intact when it comes to Galadriel and Elrond, and they're definitely going to need it when it comes to season 2. I'm surprised no Prince Durin in here whatsoever. But I am glad that we finally got some answers, not only for the stranger as Gandalf, but also for Halbrand as Sauron. So it seems as though both of my predictions, or at least speculations, were true of those characters being who they were. Because when it comes to Sauron, I was like, in the previous episode, I said to myself, I know we're going to get revealed it, so it's either going to be Halbrand because he just rubs me the wrong way, or it's going to end up being somebody we haven't seen whatsoever. And, Halbrand has definitely taken a life of his own, and while I didn't really care for him so much in season 1, I definitely do think I will be paying very close attention come season 2. And if anything else, it does open my eyes a little bit more to the revelation that we wind up getting in the previous episode, where Halbrand was standing over Adar, right? And Adar mentions that he killed Sauron himself, and then even like picks at Halbrand a little bit, like, oh, why do you have animosity against me? Did I kill your family? Did I kill your wife, your child, sort of thing, right? Really irking at him. So if Halbrand is making his way to Mordor right now, to Mount Doom, I fully expect him and Adar to at least not only bump into each other, but maybe clash once again. And see, like, hey, Adar, if I'm Sauron, are you going to bow the knee to me one more time? It should be interesting to kind of see what that connection is going to be like. But overall, guys, incredible way to go ahead and end this season. Beautifully told stories. Some really great, incredible characters in here as well. The pacing was everything for me personally. Maybe kind of slow for some people. I don't know how you guys certainly took it, but I really enjoyed the pacing. Great action, amazing visuals and special effects, and it just felt very Tolkien to me, if you ask me. But again, these are just my A+ opinions. At the end of the day, I want to know yours, guys. What did you guys think of episode 8 of The Rings of Power, and what did you think of the overall series itself? Let your thoughts be known in the live chat or the comment section box below, guys. And until next season, do me a big favor as always. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.